know that a baby is born with 300 bones, which is 94 more than adults, and they grow and fuse together during development? Now you know. Hello and welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm your host Juliet, and I'm happy to be co-hosting with my co-host Chef, who will be joining you in few seconds. We have a lot of great stuff lined up for you, so don't touch that dial. You can talk to us on our social media at ktnhome_, that is on Twitter and Instagram, and at ktnhome on Facebook. The hashtag to use is hashtag the parenting show. My social media handles are at Julian Megan, that is on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
That was an amazing fact Juliet shared. My name is Chepchumba Charus, and this is the Parenting Show. To start us off, I'll be starting with my story, and on my story I have this amazing lady called Maya. Maya became a mom at the age of 15, and she has a different story from what we expect, even from how the parents received her, how the school treated her, and how she later on went back to school, finished education, and even became a career woman. And she's now a journalist working with one of the biggest media companies, I think, in the world. Maya will be sharing her story just now on my story, so don't go anywhere. Follow me on my social media handles at Chepchumba Cherus on Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter at Marlin Cherus. Hi guys, welcome to the Parenting Show and to Cocoa segment here, my story. And on my story I have a beautiful lady. She's called Maya Hayakawa. Maya will be sharing her story, how motherhood has been for her. She got into motherhood at a very early age, and she's been able to do it. I mean, the baby is now a big boy, and I'm sure they look like brothers and sisters. She'll be sharing her story. So welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much for having me.
Kindly introduce yourself again. I'm sure I didn't do justice to that introduction. Just say who you are and what you do.
All right, so my name is Maya Hayakawa. I work for BBC News Africa. I'm a business broadcast journalist, and we have a program called Money Daily, which has been suspended, obviously, because of COVID-19. So we've been figuring out ways to work from home, and but basically I just cover business and I look after Africa. Many of you may know me from my previous job at K24, where I was a business journalist. And I also did quite a number of acting gigs. I'm a mother of a 14-year-old boy, and recently just had bonus sons as well, because I'm engaged, and he came in with 2 other children. So a mother of 3 now. I don't know what else I can say, but I hope that gives you a picture of who I am.
Yes. Thank you so much, Maya, for that introduction, and I'm so happy to have you today on the show. And let's just start from your story. I mean, you got pregnant at a very early age, and even, okay, let me not share as if I know your story, because I know your story. I read your story. So let's talk to that person who maybe doesn't know anything about you. So you can maybe just tell us how you got into motherhood at a very early age.
So I got pregnant at the age of 15, and I gave birth 2 weeks after my 16th birthday. And I happened to fall pregnant the one time that at the age of 15. I share my story a lot because I really believe in inspiring young girls to know that it's not the end of the world if they find themselves pregnant. I think that it's also important for the community to think about the opportunities that they're giving these young girls, because there's a lot of stigma attached to teenage pregnancies. And I believe that if these young girls are given a fighting chance, then they can grow up to be very successful women. And so I think it's important for me to share my story. If you haven't had a chance to read my story, then you can watch this YouTube talk that I gave on Dadasphere. Just go and type in Mom at 16, and I just give a whole background and context of, how it is that I found out that I was pregnant and how I transitioned into being a teenage mom into who I am today.
So wow, that story is one touching story. So Maya, how was it being pregnant at the age of 15? What was going through your mind? And how are you going to tell this story to your parents? Breaking the news to them that you're pregnant.
Huh. Well, first of all, let's just begin by saying that at that age, obviously, the last thing that you're thinking about is getting pregnant. So it never even crossed my mind that I might be pregnant. So by the time that I actually found out, I was like more than 6 months pregnant. And you can imagine how scared I was. First of all, I didn't think it was even possible for you to get pregnant with just, having sex one time. And then I didn't know where to start. I was really scared. I didn't know who to tell. I didn't know where to go. So the first person that I decided to tell was my brother, because he was who I trusted the most. And he was just 10 years old at the time. But to me at that time, I thought that that was the best person that I could tell. And that's the person that I went to for advice. And he basically just told me, you know what, don't worry. I'll be there when you go ahead and tell mom. So after that, I then told my mother. And then in the process and in different stages, that's when I told my father, and then my friends, and then my school, and everyone else. So it was a really scary process. You start thinking about your future. At that age, obviously, you're not fully aware of who you are, and you're still growing up to understand life, and you're still learning who you are as a person and all of that. So I was really scared that I would face a lot of scrutiny and criticism from my schoolmates. So I was really afraid to even go back to school, and considered even dropping out of school, but my mother really encouraged me to keep on going with school.
And how are you able to even come to terms that you're now pregnant at the age of 15, and you need to start this journey of becoming a mother? How was the acceptance stage? Yeah.
I am really into journaling. So I actually journal a lot, and I journaled throughout the whole journey and the whole process. And you'll see, getting into the mind of 15-year-old Maya, I was really upset that men had this choice, or boys, let me say boys, at that age, at that time, have this choice to not be a part of the journey and to not have to be there for the child. But as a girl, when you are pregnant, you immediately are aware of the fact that you're going to be responsible for another life. But that's something that you can't really fathom until you give birth. To really understand the responsibility it takes for you to raise a child is something you'll never really be able to fully grasp until you actually give birth. So it was it was really scary. I just didn't know where to start and where to begin. And the acceptance came. I think I was in denial. I really was in denial until I even told my mom. And how I chose to tell her was that I said, oh, I haven't had my periods for the last 7 months. I couldn't find the words to actually say that I was pregnant. So she was the one who said, well, that means that you're pregnant. So let's go ahead and get a pregnancy test and confirm if you're actually pregnant. And when I saw the actual pregnancy test is when I finally accepted that, okay, I am pregnant. There is a human being that is growing inside of me. And then, you start off with all these doctor's visits and all of that. And that's when you begin to realize that, hey, I'm going to become a mom.
I wanted to ask this part of, when you're going to school while you're pregnant and you had all these signs of pregnancy, how are the kids helping you to even just feel better, or the teachers, or even your mom? I mean, when you're pregnant, there's morning sickness, mood swings, at times you don't.
Yeah, does anyone really have a good birth story to tell? Like, honestly, for me, I actually didn't know what the birthing process is, because at the age of 15, what do you really know? You know nothing. All you know, are the things that you watch on TV and the movies and all of that. And the movies don't really show the entire process. What they show is, your water breaking and then the baby coming out. So that's what I thought it would be. So I remember I went to the washroom. I came out and my water broke, and I ran to my mom and I was like, oh my gosh, the baby's coming. My water just broke. And my mom was like, you know what? Don't worry. It's fine. I'm going to go pack my things. I'm going to go get my toothbrush and toothpaste. You just wait and we can go to the hospital in the next hour. I'm like, are you insane? Did you not hear me? The baby is coming out now. It didn't register, or it didn't click that there was a whole labor process, So I get to the hospital, and luckily I dilated and everything was fine. But I was in labor for for more than 12 hours. I was in labor for a really, really, really long time. Yeah, it was a really long time. And some of my friends actually came and they were in the delivery room with me and my mother as well. And then, unfortunately, or should I say fortunately, I don't know, it had to be an emergency cesarean because I was really small. So my body frame was super tiny and my baby couldn't fit. So I had to go for an emergency C-section. So I always tell the story to my son, and I'm like, I had to go through both the natural delivery process as well as the cesarean as well. So it was, yeah, it was really, really, really tough. But I was really happy once I had him, and I was like, you know, it was worth the pain.
I hear you. I went through the same. I labored and ended up going for CS. Anyways,
you're like,
such
if we knew
mother.
we were going to have a C-section, why not just have it right from the start? Like, why take us through the entire process, you know?
I know. So, okay, after baby is here, what psychological effects did it have on you? Let's start with the psychological, emotional, and even the physical effects that it had on you, be as a young mom.
Okay, I'll start off with the physical effects. Because I had gone through both the cesarean and the labor pains and all of that. I don't want to get too graphic. I'm not really sure how much I'm able to say. But let's just say I was in a lot of pain. I was in a lot of pain because, you know, cesarean section, you're having 7 layers of stitches. You're having stitches in other places as well. So I know that a lot of teachers were concerned because when I was holding the baby, when they came to visit me, I looked like I was super depressed, but it actually wasn't that I was depressed. It was that I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't laugh, I couldn't smile, I couldn't talk, I couldn't anything. And even the healing process after that is really difficult. You can't like get up and move, and you want to be able to pick up your baby whenever you want to, but you're also in a lot of pain. So my mom actually moved into my bedroom with me to make sure that if I needed any extra assistance, that she was there, which was really, really helpful, right? So the physical healing part of it was difficult. Luckily for me, I didn't have to go through the depression phase, which some women do go through. For me, it was, I immediately fell in love with my son, total unconditional love. That emotional bond is so powerful and so strong, and it's just a beautiful feeling. There's just no other way to describe it, and I know that every mother can relate to this. But the emotional aspect of, I was totally heartbroken with the fact that I began realizing that my son, unfortunately, isn't going to have his father around. And that for me was really difficult, and it was really heartbreaking for me to come to terms with that. And it was a really long journey for me to finally come into peace with it, and to be able to forgive my son's biological father for not being there. And it was a process that took many, many years. So yeah, and I would say that those were the overwhelming emotions. And of course, then you start thinking about the future of your child. You start thinking about what you want for your child. You start thinking about what motherhood really means to you, what it means to be a mother. And then also at that young age, you're thinking about your youth, and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to balance this? You are a 16-year-old with the responsibility and the bills of a 30-something-year-old, and it becomes really overwhelming because you don't know where to start. So it's been a journey, and it still is a journey. The journey of motherhood never ends until the day that you die, right? It just never ends. You keep discovering new things, you keep growing, you keep learning, you keep making mistakes, and realizing that journey never ends, especially when it's your firstborn, because every year is new, every milestone is new. And then, you know, it's the teenage years, and then now I'm with my son who's now transitioning into becoming a man, and he's transitioning into going into university. This is something I've never experienced as a mother before, so I'm still learning on the job.
I hear you. And being a new mom, did that change you in any way? Like being a young mom, not a new mom, yeah, a young mom.
Yeah, and I even forgot to mention the physical parts. Let's talk about our bodies and how our bodies change completely. Coming to terms with the fact that my body isn't the same, and loving your body. And at that age, obviously, it's a totally different conversation, because young girls can't relate to that. They can't relate to the fact that you have stretch marks on your body, and just in general, your body frame completely changes. And that too is a journey that I've been on, accepting and loving your body the way that it is. And I think that it's something that all women and all mothers can relate to. So I also have redefined what it means to really be beautiful, and embracing those stretch marks as a sign of motherhood, and as a sign of the fact that you were able to bring life into this world, and redefining what beauty really means, right? What was the question that you asked again? I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Thank you for those wonderful insights. I mean, so many of us struggle after being mom. So the question was, after being a new mom, how did that like being a young mom at a very tender age, how did that change you? And the next question is, okay, after you told your husband, okay, not husband, your baby daddy, that you're pregnant, and throughout the journey, was even there for you? Ama, you just went missing until when all of you became adults? I believe, okay, I don't know if it was your age or a much older. Yeah.
It was really difficult when I was young, because I didn't have friends who could relate to the challenges that I was facing. At that time, you don't have friends who are parents. So it's a very lonely journey, because there's no one else that you can really talk to about it except for your mother at that time. And as much as your friends want to be there for you and they want to be supportive as they can, they just cannot relate to you. And remember, at that age, what are your priorities? Your priorities are really just schooling and friends and all of that. So I had to mature really, really quickly, realizing that I'm not just responsible for my own life, but I'm responsible for another child's life. Transitioning into that and being able to juggle the two, being able to live out my youth and at the same time parent as well, was something that I struggled with for a really long time. And just the fact that I had to miss out on certain occasions because I was nursing. I had to miss out on things like prom and other activities that at that age you would be doing. I didn't have the luxury of being able to do that. And then when it came to the different ages where you're in kindergarten and the first years of school, I was always the youngest parent, always the youngest parent. Which was totally, a very interesting experience, because then you're in your early 20s and you're interacting with people who are in their 40s and women who are in their 40s and all of that. As far as the biological father of my child, he never was there. And from the very beginning, I remember when I told him that I was actually pregnant, he said some very hurtful things, and he said, that's not my child. I don't think that that's my child, and he even called me a whore and all of these things. So I knew from the start that he wasn't going to be there, and I felt super guilty because I felt like I had failed as a mother, because I couldn't give my child a father figure, or a father, or what I thought was really important for him. And that for me was really difficult.
I hear you. Wow. And we have like 5 minutes left for us to finish this conversation. And I wouldn't want us to finish before, okay, even at this moment where all of us are at home, kids are no longer going to school, and we've even seen on the news that how do I put it, rampant teen pregnancies. What would you advise parents at this particular time, or even just talk to young girls? I mean, I'm sure that some of them are watching and it happened to you. Maybe you know why it did, why it did, what you did right or not right, just talk to them.
Well, first of all, it's interesting that people have zeroed in on the teenage pregnancies and looking at it now and saying that the teenage pregnancies are rising right now during the pandemic. And I think it's one thing to have all of these statistics to see that these teenage, there's a rising number of teenage pregnancies. But I think that there's a lot of data that's missing, because we need to figure out the root of why it is that these teenage pregnancies are rising. Why is it that we don't have the data about the perpetrators that are out there, so that we can get to the root cause? Because there's involuntary sex, and then there's also voluntary sex as well. So those are the two main areas that we need to start looking at, and not just looking at the rising teenage pregnancies. But I think that it's high time that we as a society look at it and find a way and figure out a way to support these young girls, because the fact that they are giving birth, and there are thousands of young girls who don't get to go back to school because of the fact that they are teenage moms. I think that it's important that we make sure that these young girls are able to go back to school. I think that for parents, one thing to consider is that you really need to have this conversation. You need to have the conversation on sex. I know that it's really uncomfortable, and I think that that is a conversation that you don't start all of a sudden at the age of 13 or 14, but it's an ongoing conversation that you start at a young age. Obviously, that's age appropriate, and you keep having these conversations as they grow older, and as they are able to mature and able to understand more the responsibility that comes with sex. I think that we do a lot of emphasis when it comes to sex education on just not on saying no, and we just focus on the physical effects. We focus on the fact that you're going to be a teenage mom and all of these things. Don't have sex. We focus on protection and make sure that you're using etc. But we don't really cover the emotional and the spiritual consequences. And that's something that I wish that people really would teach children. And I wish that I had known at a young age. I wish I had known that it's not just the physical aspects, but there's a whole emotional aspect, and there's a whole spiritual aspect as well. So that's the message that I would give. And especially for the young ones who do find themselves pregnant, not to give up on their dreams, to know that it still is possible for you to be able to achieve all of your dreams, to keep going. Yeah. Are we out of the 5 minutes?
Yeah, time is up. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I would actually, let me just say thank you so much to everyone who's joined in, who's watched this whole story, Maya's story. You can find her story on, what's the platform where your story is?
So you can find it on YouTube on Dadasphere. If you just search Maya Hayakawa Mom at 16, I give a talk on my story.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Thank you. My social media handles at Chef Tubacharu. See you next time. Bye. What an amazing story. An amazing story indeed. I'm sure you've been inspired. And yeah, once you make a mistake, I mean, it's not always, it never ends up as we think, because God has better plans for all of us. We are going on a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. Coming up next is Parenting One-on-One with Juliet Moremi.